Hi everyone, this is Chris, one of the technology librarians in the studio at the Sachem Public Library in Holbrook, New York. If you'd like to see some of the cool things that we can do for you in the studio, then head over to sachemlibrary.org and then hover over Services and Resources and click on the studio. That's where you'll find some of the services that we offer. Today, we're going to go over the enhanced camera functions upgraded in iOS 14 for iPhone. Today, I'm using my iPhone SX Max. If you have an iPhone 11 or 12, there will be other functions because of the enhanced camera, but this video will demonstrate the basic functions of the newly enhanced camera app. Before we get into the camera app itself, it's important to take a peek into the Settings app to see how your camera is set up on your device. So go ahead and go to the Settings app, which looks like gears. Now, before we go through all of the areas and settings, remember, I have an older phone. So if you have an iPhone 11 or 12, your settings may not be in the same order, and you will have more settings that my phone doesn't have. So if it looks like I'm skipping areas, it's simply because my phone does not have the capabilities of the iPhone 11 or 12. Once in settings, scroll down to camera. It's all the way down here. The first setting is formats. Apple changed the default style. Apple changed the default file type for photos to a new file type. So if we go into format, you can see that there's high efficiency and most compatible. As useful as it is to have a new file format that uses less memory, you can't share photos with non-Apple users. So I recommend setting your format to most compatible. That way you can share photos with people who don't have an Apple device. So if you tap on camera in the upper left-hand corner to go back to the camera app, the next section is recording video. This allows you to control the quality of your video. And honestly, any setting here will have amazing high-definition video quality. And the higher the quality, the more file size is taken up on your device. I recorded 4K at 30 feet per second, or FPS, which is probably more than I need. I recommend for most people to have the default setting at 1080p HD at 30 FPS. This gives great video quality with optimal memory storage. Stepping back onto the camera's main settings, the next area is record slow-mo. So if you haven't used this yet, it's fun to do a slow motion video. We don't get into taking slow motion videos in this session, but if you have a chance, play with this mode because it's a lot of fun. If you go into settings and record slow-mo, you will see that the selections are less than the standard video part of the camera. So I use 1080p HD at 120 FPS because the resolution is superior at slow motion speed. Stepping back out to the camera settings once again, the next area is a simple toggle switch for record stereo sound. And I keep this on because it does make a difference if you play back your videos on your HD TV. The sound quality is definitely superior. The next section is preserve settings. So when you go into that setting, you can see sections with toggle switches. The first is camera mode. If you have this turned on, the phone will remember the last mode you were in. So if the last time you used your camera, you were in slow-mo, then when this setting is turned on, when you open your camera app again, it will still be in slow-mo or whatever function you were in last. I recommend not having this turned on if you are trying to take a quick photo, because most of the time we're trying to, get our camera out to take a quick picture, and having to switch it from the last used mode is very inconvenient. The next section is creative controls. Much like camera mode, when this function is turned on, it preserves the last used filter and aspect ratio, which is the size of the screen, the depth settings, and other settings that you used in your last photo. I also recommend not having this on because not every photo will require the same settings as your last shot. The last section is live photos. If you're not familiar with live photos, if you have it turned on, then when you go to your Photos app, the phone is constantly taking video. And when you actually take the photo, the phone preserves the previous second before and after you take the picture. It also records audio. I recommend not having this function on for a number of reasons. The first reason is that it takes up more memory than a regular photo. And the second is that it could affect your battery life. Also, if you share a live photo and you say something that you didn't intend anyone hearing, it will be in the photo. But why is this particular function turned on in my settings? I have it turned on in this particular setting because I have live photos functionality turned off. If I had this setting, the setting of live photo turned off, then my camera will default to having live photos on by default, even if I turn it off in the app. So I leave the switch on to preserve my desire not to have live photos turned on. Stepping back into the camera app again, and some of these settings may be different, again, for different models of phone. The next setting is use volume up for burst. If you used burst mode before, taking a number of photos in rapid succession like a professional photographer would, capturing like a sport event or people moving fast, then you may remember that holding down the shutter button on the screen would make that happen. That on-screen functionality has been removed. So now if you want to take a burst, the only way to do that is to turn this function on. So if you want to capture burst photos, use the volume up button, slide on your phone. The next section is scan QR codes. We've all seen them before on posters, instructions, or somewhere out in our travels. QR codes look like barcodes that are square. We even use them in the library from time to time. So turning on this functionality allows your camera to scan a QR code without the need for a separate app. It's super handy, and I do recommend turning it on. There's another section in the camera setting called composition. And within it are two toggle switches. One is for grid, which overlays a grid on the camera screen, which helps you align shots. I like that a lot but again, it's a matter of preference. The other is mirror front camera, which if you've ever taken a selfie, you know that front-facing camera takes a mirror image of yourself. With this setting turned on, the photo will not be in reverse. So usually in the old times before iOS 14, you take a selfie and it would flip the picture around. In this case, it won't do that. The next section is photo capture. Again, there are some toggle settings. So the first is prioritize faster shooting. This feature should be turned on because the setting reduces the time you can take between photos in succession. So if you want to take a bunch of pictures at the same time without doing a burst, it decreases that time in between shots. The next toggle is Smart HDR, and HDR means high dynamic range. This setting will use more memory because when you take a photo, the camera actually takes 3 photos at the same time with different exposures and automatically blends them to make the best photo possible. Having this setting on along with prioritize faster shooting eliminates the problem in previous versions of iOS when HDR was on, which used to make the camera app lag. The last setting is keep normal photo. This is where you have HDR on, and it can get a little confusing. If you have this setting on, it will store multiple versions of the same photo in your photo album. I have this turned off because I just need the photo, and I don't need to micromanage what HDR does. So let's go out of settings. And before we actually go into the camera app, I want to show you a really cool trick you can do with the app icon. So if you press and hold the camera button, this menu comes up. So what's really cool is if you really need to take a quick picture, you can just tap on this and hold it, and this menu comes up, and you can quickly take a selfie, record a video, take a portrait mode, take a selfie portrait. You could do all of these different things. And then the other 2 selections on the bottom, edit home screen and remove app, which are on every app when you long press them. So this is a really cool way to get access to the menu in the device for the camera without actually opening the app and then toggling through to get to the area that you need. Okay, so let's go and actually open the app. Touch the app, and the app opens, and it defaults to photo. So when you open it, it doesn't look very dissimilar from the way it always looked. But there are some subtle differences that allow you to control the camera in ways not yet imagined. Let's start with the screen layout of the camera mode. At the top of your screen on the left is your flash control, so you can turn it on and off. To the right of the button is to allow live photos. So right now my live photos is off, but if I hit it and it turns golden, it's on. We'll keep that off. So at the center of the top of the menu is an up arrow, or some people call it a chevron. And that controls how you view your bottom menu. So when you touch it, if you look at the top, take a look down here at the bottom, it changes the menu right by the shutter. When the arrow is pointed up, you see the modes, photo, portrait, etc. When you touch the arrow up and it points down, that menu changes to the settings for that particular mode. So for photo, you have more control over the flash, where you can turn it on, off, or put on auto. Your live photos, on or off. Your aspect ratio, which basically controls the size of your screen. So I can go from 4:3 to square, or 16:9, which actually expands to the entire screen. The next setting is a timer, which, yes, just like the old school timers on your old cameras, you can set a timer for 3 seconds or 10 seconds so you can get in the photo with your family. And the last one here are filters. This just allows you to change tint in the photo to make it look either old or dramatic, or add some kind of different filters to it. And there's even some black and whites at the end. For portrait mode, actually, you pop this back up. If you go to portrait mode, the modes are a little different. If we hit the chevron, the modes are a little bit different. So again, we have your flash control, your timer, your filters, and then you have this little F type symbol. When you touch that, it controls the difference in your how much your background fades. So if you're not familiar with portrait mode, it's kind of like a professional photographer or a DSLR camera, where when you're taking a picture of the subject, it blurs out the background a little bit. Sometimes it's just a little blurry to fully opaque. So when you're using this mode, you can control the rate of fade behind the actual subject that you're taking a picture of. So going out of that mode, you'll now see there's an indication here for lighting. So depending on how you want to light your subject, let's see if we can turn this sideways a little bit. Right now, this is natural light. If I switch it to studio light, it makes it a little bit brighter, and you can control this no matter what the lighting conditions are. This is like a stage light, where it really puts a bright light on the subject and not so much the background. And then there's a black and white for that. There's two different black and whites for that. So I'm too close to the subject now in order to make that work. But it's really good to have these selections for the type of lighting that you're going to use in portrait mode. So going back to just the screen layout, I'll go back to photo. In the camera app, in all modes except for portrait and pano, you have a round circle with the 1x inside it. That's your zoom. If you touch it, just touch it, it actually brings you to a 2x optical zoom, which means the lenses control the zoom on the camera. So if you wanted to zoom more, press and hold that 2x button, and now you get a dial. And you can slide your finger to zoom in and zoom out and control that rate of zoom. So one thing to keep in mind is once you go past the 2x, you're not doing an optical zoom anymore. So in other words, the lenses aren't moving apart to zoom in and out. You're doing a digital zoom, which is basically the camera enlarging that 2x zoom to make it bigger. So when you are doing something like that, when you're zooming more than 2 times, you may lose a little resolution when you're doing your zoom in, but that's okay because most of the time, especially with iPhone 11 and 12, I have friends with those cameras, they don't lose the resolution as much as they do with the older cameras or the older phones. On the bottom right-hand side, right next to where the shutter button is, there's these 2 interlocking arrows. Those control your camera. So this controls the difference between your rear camera and your front camera. So you see my ugly, dirty studio here at home. So that will control your front-facing camera and your rear-facing camera. And on the bottom left-hand side is an image of the last picture that you took. This is a video that I took earlier today. So this was the showing what it is. So we're all familiar with that big white button, or if it's red, it's video. That is the shutter button. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in the past, if you pressed and held that button down, it would start a burst of photos. That's now done with the lower volume button, as we saw in settings before. But you can still take individual photos with the up and down volume buttons as well, just like if you wanted to use it like an old-fashioned camera. So that pressing and holding that shutter button on the screen has been given a new functionality. When you press and hold it, it automatically changes the mode to video. So as long as you're holding that button down, the phone is taking video. See now it's turned red, and I have the ticker on top showing that I'm actually taking video. And when I release it, it stops taking video and returns to photo. Now, if you see when I'm pressing down and taking that video, there's a line to the right of my finger that goes to a lock, like a padlock. If I wanted to take this video and then just lock it on because I don't want to hold it anymore, all I have to do is slide it over to the right, and now it's continuing to take video without me holding it. And it gives me a shutter button, so if in the process of taking video I wanted to take stills, I can take still pictures while taking video. As you can see, Apple really did an overhaul of the camera app, even though they didn't make any large changes to the look of the app. The changes will make a difference in your photo taking, I guarantee that. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on updates to the camera app in iOS 14. Next month, we'll switch to iPad and go over some tips and tricks with iPad OS, which has subtle differences from iOS 14. Once again, my name is Chris, one of our technology librarians in the studio. And don't forget to check us out at sachemlibrary.org. And if you have any questions about the studio or anything having to do with the Sachem Public Library, give us a call at 631-588-5024. And the studio can be reached at extension 230. You can also reach us by email at studio@sachemlibrary.org. And if you take some great pictures, share them with us. We'd love to see them. Thanks and have a great day.